Hello CRE Stride people, thank you very much for having me at your meeting today. My presentation is on health assessments for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people. That's what my grant going forward is going to be about. I'm Jeff Sperling, I'm a GP at the Inala Indigenous Health Service and Senior Lecturer at the University of Queensland. And I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where I'm presenting from, the Turrbal and Yagara people. To introduce myself a bit further, I'm a white, non-Indigenous male and born and schooled in Brisbane. You can see that's me in the dress between my parents there and in the nerdy glasses at Brisbane State High School. My younger doctor jobs were scattered through Queensland, Cairns, Mackay, Townsville. In fact, I did my first GP jobs in Yarrabah, Babinda and Gordonvale, and then went on to the United Kingdom where I did a diploma in tropical medicine, which in turn led to some time with Médecins Sans Frontières in Honduras, and you can see me there with the Indigenous people in the central mountains of Honduras I was working on a project dealing with Chagas disease, which is a neglected tropical disease where my job was to detect the kids with Chagas disease and go around and deal out the tablets. Then came back from Honduras and went straight into GP training in Inala and Stanthorpe, and my academic GP registrar job was at the University of Queensland in 2004. Before I had twins in 2005, and since then I've been a GP and senior lecturer in Brisbane. My PhD journey started in 2010 with the aim of computerising paper-based Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health assessments, which were still relatively new, and to use the data from those health assessments for research purposes. And I went in with quite a quantitative bent, which I guess I still have to some degree, but it turned out to be the qualitative component that had the most impact academically and clinically, and also on me, I think. And what I found was on interviewing people in the community key informants was that it wasn't so much the biomedical issues that I had been trained to be interested in, such as cardiovascular disease and dental issues and diabetes and things like that, but it was actually social determinants of health and social emotional well-being that was what was important to people in the community. And in response to that, we put more social determinants into health assessments. The impetus for my grant proposal was that the way current health assessments were structured for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is that they had the potential to be alienating, tick box, income generating, irrelevant exercises of questionable benefit, especially given for the current age ranges for health assessments, which don't really take young people into account. And my grant I hope to listen to young people, young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and create, with their input and clinicians' input, a relevant health check that has the best possible chance of detecting important social determinants and social and emotional wellbeing concerns for young people, with a view to intervening and alleviate challenging social determinants and psychological distress. The nuts and bolts or research questions for my grant proposal were: what are the health priorities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people, which I intend to answer with semi-structured interviews and focus groups with young people in Inala. What does a co-created health assessment using input from young people and clinicians look like? And again, that'll be answered using semi-structured interviews and focus groups with young people and clinicians. And then down the track, does this new co-created health assessment work? So that'll involve an RCT of the newly co-created health assessment compared to the usual health assessments, measuring outcomes like psychological distress and social determinants, and then we'll look at some of the data that comes out of that health check. So far we're up to recruiting a research assistant to look at a literature review. We've got a young man, Jed Fraser, Bidgera man, who's doing a dissertation as part of his MPH, and he's doing a systematic review of health assessments for Indigenous young people to look at what's been happening around the world, which has thrown up some interesting results in Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. And going forward, the important priorities are to survive COVID-19 and to not spread COVID-19 either as a GP or a researcher, and to fulfil the grant research requirements, of course. So the next steps are to get an Aboriginal research officer to help with the qualitative research, and to recruit a PhD student. Both of those are funded as part of the grant. And I'll need to set up a community advisory group, for which I also have some money for, and I'm sure there's a synergy there with CRE Stride And there are also synergies with the community advisory group and qualitative studies going forward with other CQU grants that I'm involved with. And then there are obviously other things down the track that we'll worry about later. Thank you all very much for your attention, and I look forward to collaborating. This picture is taken from a trip I did with my family a year and a bit ago in Nepal, and we're walking towards Mount Everest way off there in the distance, and this trek felt a bit daunting because we're many tea houses and nights away from the finish. And but I kind of thought you just need to put one step in front of the other, and that's a little bit how I feel with this grant. But I know if I put one step in front of the other, we'll get there eventually.